He lied about having cancer, cheated with multiple women, gave me an STI while I was pregnant and left me screaming in labor to sleep with a 20-year-old. Now, I'm exposing everything. I had always known there was something about him that didn't quite add up. It wasn't just the way he would talk in circles when I asked certain questions, it was the little things, the way he avoided eye contact, the way he changed the subject whenever I dug too deep. But when we first got together, he told me something that made all my suspicions feel irrelevant. He had cancer. He told me his operation could be his last chance, and if it didn't go well, it could be terminal. It was a shock, but I took his word for it. I thought, if this is true, I can't imagine what he's going through. He told me his treatments had left him infertile, that we'd never be able to have kids of our own. So imagine our shock and joy when, just at the start of 2024, I found out I was pregnant. Somehow, despite everything he said, I was expecting. And when our little girl was born, healthy and strong, I couldn't believe how lucky we were. He was in remission, the tumor shrinking, and our daughter was thriving. Life was starting to feel like it was finally on the right track. But my pregnancy wasn't what I imagined. It was lonely. He was dealing with his treatments and recovery, and while he was doing everything he could to get better, I was left to do most of it on my own. I knew the tumor had to shrink before his operation to have the best shot at surviving, so I took on as much as I could. I wanted to be supportive, but at the same time, I felt isolated, like I was carrying the weight of it all. When he moved in with his mom to focus on his recovery, I understood. It was easier for me, too. I could focus on caring for our baby without trying to juggle everything at once. Still, it was hard not having him with us at home, especially with everything we had been through. But he made time for us. He came by, spent time with our daughter, and on Wednesdays, he had his daddy-daughter days to bond with her. I appreciated it, even though a part of me missed him being there all the time. Then, last week, things changed. There was an attempted break-in at our house. I was scared. Who wouldn't be? So I asked him to come stay with me while I waited for the locks to be changed. But he wouldn't. I called his mom, and she slipped up, telling me he wasn't even home. That's when the doubts I had been trying to ignore started creeping in, and I couldn't let it go anymore. I spent hours that night trying to piece things together. After a while, I couldn't ignore the suspicion any longer. So, I did something I never thought I would. I went to Facebook. Within an hour, I found the first two women. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but it was all there, plain as day. My heart dropped, and I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. This wasn't about hormones or paranoia anymore. During my pregnancy, I had wondered about a lot of things. I had felt like something was off, but he always told me I was being paranoid. Every time I asked, he'd tell me I was hurting him with my suspicions. The one thing I could never shake was the idea that something didn't quite add up with his cancer story. So, I went to his mom, and she dropped a bomb on me. He didn't have cancer. What he had was an autoimmune disease, something serious, but not terminal, and he was receiving treatment for it. He'd also been in rehab, not a hospital. He was recovering from a cocaine addiction. I was stunned, but I didn't say anything. I assumed maybe he wanted to keep his struggles private, so I kept quiet and tried to be supportive. But now, everything was different. I sent him a message, telling him I knew about his girlfriend and that he shouldn't bother coming home anymore. I had changed the locks. He panicked, begging me to talk, to let him explain. But I didn't want to hear it anymore. I started to see things more clearly for the first time, and it wasn't pretty. He had been gaslighting me for so long, making me doubt myself at every turn. I told him I was done. Then, I found more. I found a photo of him with his current girlfriend, posted on social media. I shared it, and the woman blocked me immediately, but her sister reached out. She told me her family had always known something was off, that they never trusted him. She told me he painted me as a crazy ex who was lying about everything. I sent her the birth certificate, the photos from the hospital, everything I could think of to show her the truth. Then, things started to snowball. Another woman reached out. She was just as furious as I was, helping me piece together the timeline. She told me how he had broken her heart, and now I realized he had been doing this to multiple women, lying to them just like he lied to me. The more I found, the worse it got. His story about chemo and cancer was just a cover-up for his addiction, and he had been lying to everyone. The real truth was much darker. When I was in labor, fighting for my life during a complicated delivery, he had snuck away to be with another woman. I had no idea at the time, but when I pieced it all together, it broke me. By the time I made my post on Facebook, calling him out and sharing the evidence, I was exhausted. I hadn't slept in 2 days. I'd been dealing with the harassment from his family, the crisis team, everything piling on me. But I had to do it. I had to make sure everyone knew the truth. What's worse is that he had been telling these women that he couldn't get them pregnant because of his cancer. He used that lie to manipulate them, to make them believe he didn't need protection, and it led to me getting an STI during my pregnancy. I had nearly died during labor because of it, and he wasn't even there. I decided to expose him completely. I showed the texts from his mom, making it clear to everyone that he had never had cancer. I made sure every woman he'd been with knew the truth, and I went to the police. Me and my daughter now have safeguarding in place, and I feel a sense of relief knowing that we're protected. It's been a week since everything came to light. I can't even begin to process everything that's happened. But I've learned something important: the truth always comes out, no matter how much someone tries to hide it. He had been lying and manipulating for years, and now it's all exposed. I'm ready to move on and protect my daughter, and I'll do whatever it takes to make sure he can't hurt anyone else. The hardest part is knowing how many people believed his lies. How many people he convinced he was this sick, noble man, trying to do the right thing for his family. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but I can't keep living in his lies. We deserve better than that. My daughter deserves better than that. Now, I wait. I wait for the police to take action, for everything to be resolved. But for now, it feels like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. The truth is out, and nothing can change that. Last week, everything fell apart. I found myself staring at my phone, heart racing, as everything I thought I knew about my partner, about us, crumbled. He had been lying to me for months, if not longer. It all started with a break-in attempt at the house. I'd asked him to come stay with me while I waited for the locks to be changed. I was scared, and I needed him. But he wouldn't come. I called his mom, and that's when she let something slip that set everything in motion. She said he wasn't even home. The one person who I thought I could trust with everything. He wasn't even there when I needed him the most. I tried to brush it off at first, but then I remembered all the things that had never quite sat right with me. Little things I ignored for the sake of our relationship. The cancer story that didn't add up, his constant absences, the way he would vanish for hours. I couldn't let it go anymore. My gut told me something was wrong, and for the first time in a long while, I listened. I spent the next several hours digging. It didn't take long. I found the first 2 women on Facebook. 2 different women. He'd been seeing them both while I was pregnant with his child. While I was at home, doing everything alone. I remember staring at their profiles in disbelief, my heart sinking as I pieced it together. Everything I'd ignored suddenly made sense. The lies. The secrets. The manipulation. All of it. I couldn't sit there pretending I didn't know anymore. So I sent him a message. I told him I knew about his girlfriend and that he shouldn't bother coming home anymore. I changed the locks. I wasn't going to let him in, not until he told me the truth. He panicked, of course. Begging me to pick up the phone, to talk to him. But there was nothing left to say. He had already told me everything I needed to know. I started to see the whole picture clearly for the first time, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd been gaslighted for so long that I didn't even recognize what was happening. Every time I questioned him, he'd turn it around, make me feel like I was the crazy one. I wasn't crazy. I just didn't want to admit that everything I had been living for the past year had been a lie. I didn't want to make the call to his girlfriend's sister, but I had no choice. She was the one who reached out after I shared the photo of them together. She told me that her family had never trusted him, that they knew something wasn't right with him. I sent her proof. The birth certificate. The photos from the hospital. All of it. I wanted her to know the truth before he could twist his story further. And I wasn't done. I wasn't going to stop until everyone knew what he had done to me. And to everyone else. That's when another woman reached out. This one was just as furious as I was. She had no idea about me, about the baby, about anything. And she was helping me gather the information I needed. She told me that he had broken her heart and that she'd never even known he was seeing me, that he had managed to keep it a secret for so long. The web he had spun was bigger than I had ever imagined. Women started coming forward, one after another, each with their own story. Some of them had been with him while we were together, some before, but all of them had been lied to in the same way. As I connected the dots, I realized something truly horrifying. He had been using the same story with every woman. He had cancer and couldn't get them pregnant. He said it to get them to sleep with him without protection, to manipulate them into thinking he was a victim, that he couldn't have kids even if he wanted to. But the truth was that he didn't have cancer. I had been living with him believing this whole time that he had a terminal illness, and it turns out it was just an excuse. An excuse to get sympathy and, more importantly, to get women to trust him without asking questions. The more I found out, the worse it got. I was still processing everything when I found out that when I was in labor, struggling through one of the worst experiences of my life, he had snuck off to be with one of the other women. I had nearly died during delivery, and he wasn't there. He was out sleeping with someone else, pretending like everything was normal. The rage I felt at that moment was overwhelming, but it wasn't just anger. It was a sick, crushing realization that I had trusted someone who had never been trustworthy, who had spent months manipulating me, and now was trying to play the victim to everyone else. I wasn't going to let him get away with it anymore. I posted everything on Facebook. The photos, the screenshots, the medical notes, everything. It wasn't just to call him out, It was to protect myself, to make sure that people knew what he had done and how deep his lies went. I was tired of keeping quiet, of hiding the truth to protect him. No more. I was done. I was also done with him trying to manipulate me. He had lied to me about everything: his cancer, his treatments, his addiction. But it wasn't just that. He had put my life and my daughter's life at risk. He had been telling women he had cancer so they wouldn't use protection, and it had nearly killed me during labor. I had an STI, something I didn't even know about until I checked my discharge notes. I had almost died because of his lies. And now, he was trying to get custody of our daughter, pretending like he had no idea who I was or who she was. It was clear that he was trying to manipulate everyone into believing he was the victim in all of this. I went to the police. I had to. I couldn't let him hurt anyone else. And now, I'm waiting for them to take action. I'm also making sure that every woman he's been with knows the truth. I can't let him continue to spread his lies. It's not just about me anymore, it's about protecting everyone he's hurt, everyone he's manipulated over the years. But even now, as I wait for everything to unfold, I feel like a weight has been lifted. I know the truth, and that's all that matters. He can lie, manipulate, and play the victim all he wants, but I won't let him hurt me or anyone else anymore. It's over for him. The past few days have been a blur. I didn't expect to be here, dealing with this mess, but now that it's all out in the open, I'm starting to process it. After everything that happened, after all the lies, I thought I'd be angry. I am angry, but more than anything, I'm just exhausted. It feels like I've been living in a fog for so long that now I'm finally seeing clearly. But the truth is, the damage is already done. I've lost so much more than just trust. It started with his frantic messages, begging me to talk, to let him explain. At first, I almost caved. The part of me that still cared, that still wanted to believe him, almost convinced me to pick up the phone. But then I remembered everything he had done, all the lies he told, how he manipulated me into thinking I was crazy every time I asked about his cancer or his weird behavior. It wasn't about me being paranoid. It was about him being a liar. I couldn't fall for it anymore. I had already made my decision. I was done. I didn't owe him anything, especially not an explanation. So I just blocked him. No more messages. No more phone calls. And then, the floodgates opened. I started hearing from more people. More women, more friends, more family members. It felt like everyone knew something about him that I didn't, and it was all coming out at once. Some of them were angry, some were apologetic, but all of them were shocked. They didn't know the full extent of his lies either. They were just as duped as I was. One of the women, the one who had been seeing him right before I found out about the other two, reached out. She was furious. She had no idea about me, about our baby, or any of the other women. She said he had been telling her he had cancer, that he couldn't get her pregnant. She had been manipulated in the same way I had been. I wasn't alone in this mess. It was comforting, in a way, to know that it wasn't just me he'd lied to. It made everything feel less like a personal betrayal and more like a pattern. He had done this before, to other women, and he had gotten away with it. It wasn't just the women who came forward, though. His friends did, too. Some of them knew more than I expected. They said they had always been suspicious, but they didn't want to get involved. It was like everyone had seen the cracks in the facade but didn't want to admit they were there. Now, they couldn't pretend anymore. It was a relief, but it also made me realize how deep his manipulation went. He had everyone wrapped around his finger, and I had been the one he targeted most. I wasn't sure whether to feel angry or just sad about it. At the same time, I started going through everything again. The messages, the calls, everything he had told me. I started looking at it with fresh eyes, and it was like a whole new world opened up. I could see the lies clearly now. When I was pregnant, I had asked him about his treatments, about his cancer, about everything. He had told me so many stories. How it was terminal, how he couldn't have kids, how everything was just too much for him. But it wasn't true. It was all a lie, and I had bought into it. He had told me everything he needed to say to keep me on his side, to keep me believing that he was the victim in all of this. But the truth was, I had been the one who was manipulated. What really hurt, though, was the way he had used me. He had known that I was vulnerable, that I wanted to believe in him, that I wanted to be supportive. He had taken advantage of that. It wasn't just the lies about his cancer or the affair, it was how he used my love for him to keep me in the dark. He had known all along that he wasn't the man he claimed to be. And I was the one left holding the pieces when everything came crashing down. But now, I feel like I'm starting to rebuild. Slowly. I've been talking to the police, gathering the evidence I need to make sure he can't hurt me or anyone else again. I've reached out to the women he's been with to make sure they know the truth. They need to protect themselves, just like I need to protect my daughter. He has no idea what's coming for him, and I'm not going to stop until he faces the consequences of everything he's done. I'm also starting to see things differently with my daughter. I've been so caught up in everything else, but now, she's the most important thing in my life. I can't let this man, this stranger who pretended to be someone he wasn't, have any influence on her. She deserves so much better. I've been taking things day by day, focusing on her, on keeping her safe, and on finding a way forward without him. I don't need him anymore. I never did. The hardest part, honestly, is knowing that so many people believed him. That they trusted him. That they bought into his story of being a sick man just trying to get better. It makes me question everything. How easily he convinced people that he was the good guy, the victim. It's exhausting, and it's hard to shake that feeling that I somehow failed by not seeing the truth sooner. But at the same time, I know I did the best I could. I loved him, I trusted him, and I wanted to believe that the man I was with was telling me the truth. I was just fooled. And I'm learning to forgive myself for that. Now, I'm just trying to figure out what comes next. I've got a lot to deal with. Legal stuff, emotional stuff, just the day-to-day of being a single mom. But I'm stronger than I was before, and I know that I'll get through this. It might take time, but I'll get there. I'm just going to keep focusing on my daughter and the truth. No matter how long it takes, I won't let him win. He already took so much from me, but I'm not going to let him take my peace. That's mine now, and he can't have it. There's still a lot ahead of me. There's more to come. But for now, I'm taking it one step at a time. The truth is out. The lies have been exposed. And I'm moving on from it all. I've been sitting with all of this for a while now, and I finally feel like I can write it all out. The whole thing, the mess, the heartbreak, the anger, everything. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, but at least now, I'm finally starting to breathe a little easier. I thought I'd be angry forever, but I'm not. I'm just tired. Tired of dealing with lies. Tired of pretending I didn't see the truth when it was staring me in the face. After everything came out. After the police got involved and I started making sure every woman he's ever lied to knew the truth. Things calmed down, but they didn't get better. The legal stuff is still going, and it feels like it's taking forever, but I'm doing what I can to stay focused on what really matters, my daughter and my own peace of mind. It's hard to believe how long I let it all go on. I spent months, maybe even years, making excuses for him. Telling myself he was sick, that he was just struggling. I wanted to believe in the version of him that he had sold me. I wanted to believe he was this amazing, strong man who was just unlucky and needed someone to stand by him. But the truth is, he wasn't strong. He was weak. And he used me. He used my love for him as an excuse to do whatever he wanted, without a second thought. And when I started to question him, he turned it all around on me, making me feel like I was the crazy one for doubting him. But now I see it for what it was. Manipulation. Gaslighting. He had me exactly where he wanted me. And honestly, I don't even know what's worse, that he lied to me, or that he used our daughter as a pawn in his game. He told all these women he couldn't have kids, that he was infertile, that he had cancer. He did all of that to make sure no one would ask questions, to make sure they trust him. But in doing so, he put us both at risk. He gave me an STI, one that almost killed me during labor. And all the while, he was out there with other women, pretending like everything was fine. I remember when I found out about the other women. I was in shock. It didn't make sense. Why would he do this to me? Why would he do this to our daughter? But then, it clicked. He had been doing it for years, to so many other people. He had built a life of lies, and I was just another part of that. It was hard to come to terms with that. I didn't want to accept it. I didn't want to believe that the man I loved could be capable of such betrayal. But I had to. And once I did, I started taking action. I made sure everyone knew the truth. I didn't care anymore about protecting his reputation. I cared about protecting myself, my daughter, and making sure no one else got hurt by him. I've been talking to the police, gathering all the evidence. I've been in touch with the women he's been with, making sure they know what they're dealing with. I don't want them to go through what I went through. It's hard to explain how much it hurts to know that he did this to me and so many other people. But I won't stop until he's held accountable for what he's done. I don't care how long it takes. The hardest part of this whole situation has been realizing how many people believed his lies. His family, his friends, his colleagues. Everyone. They all bought into the story he was selling, and it wasn't until everything came crashing down that they finally saw who he really was. It's honestly been a slap in the face. I don't know if I'll ever get that trust back. I don't know if I even want to. But it stings. It stings to know that I wasn't the only one fooled. It makes me feel stupid, but I can't keep beating myself up for that. He's the one who lied. He's the one who manipulated all of us. But despite everything, I'm moving forward. I'm focusing on my daughter. She's my world now. She's everything I care about. I can't let this man, this liar, take any more from us. He's already taken enough. I'm not going to let him take my peace, too. I've learned that I can't depend on anyone else to protect me. I have to protect myself. And I have to protect my daughter. There are days when I feel like I can't breathe because of all the things he's done. But then I look at her, and I remember why I'm doing this. I'm doing this so she can grow up knowing that no one has the right to lie to her, manipulate her, or make her feel small. I'm doing this for her so she can see that no matter how hard things get, you can always rise above it. You can always move on. I'm learning to let go of the anger. I'm learning to forgive myself for not seeing the signs sooner. I'm learning that it's okay to let go of someone who's hurt you. It doesn't mean you failed. It means you're strong enough to walk away and build something better for yourself. He tried to break me. He tried to tear my family apart. But he didn't succeed. I'm still here. And so is my daughter. And no matter what happens from here, no matter what the legal battle brings, I'll keep moving forward. I'll keep protecting her. I'll keep building the life we deserve. As for him? I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe he'll face consequences for his actions. Maybe he won't. But I'm not waiting around for that. I'm done. This is my life now, and I'm going to live it for me and my daughter. That's all that matters. The rest of it? It's just noise. And for those of you who have been through something similar, who have been lied to, manipulated, or betrayed, keep going. It's hard. It's painful. But you're stronger than you think. You can make it through, and you can build a better life on the other side. Don't let anyone steal your peace. It's yours, and it's worth protecting. I'll be okay. We'll be okay. And that's what matters.